I had a lot of insecurities bubble up. Not only am I a person of color, but the question that started to spiral in my mind was, can a woman who is gay be a successful entrepreneur?
Welcome to Courage to be Visible, the podcast for heart-centered entrepreneurs who are done hiding in the shadows and ready to step into the spotlight. I'm your host, Andrea Stenberg. I'm a video marketing strategist and a big believer that showing up as your true self is your marketing superpower. Welcome. Today, I get to talk with Coach Jen B. Jen helps women entrepreneurs own their worth, get visible, and turn aligned action into impact and income. Jen, thanks for talking to me today.
Of course. Thank you for having me. And hello, audience. Nice to see you.
So you work with a lot of women entrepreneurs, and you've probably seen what I've seen, that visibility and, kind of standing up and saying, this is who I am, this is what I do, and I'm damn good at it, is scary for a lot of people. Why do you think that is?
Well, multiple things. I usually say, and I feel like more folks need to talk about this, that entrepreneurship can be one of the biggest personal development games that you could ever play in your life. And so I think just being in that space, sometimes insecurities that we think were resolved years ago bubble up again, right? That sense of, am I too much? Am I too little? Am I likable? What if somebody rejects me? And I think that constant stream of thoughts, especially at the beginning of our entrepreneurial journey, can really write the narrative to stop us or detain us from showing up authentically as us. I mean, I've got my own story regarding that as well. And so I would say that this is very common, but taking those steps and still doing the work, we can do hard things, is important, not just to build our confidence, but for our ideal clients to also get the help and service that they need.
I love that, because I know when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I thought it was all about the tactics and the strategies and taking the action. And it's taken me a long time to realize the most important bit is kind of what's going on in between your ears. And if you get that, all the other stuff kind of falls into place. So do you feel like sharing your story about how?
I will share my story. Okay, so I completely agree with that. I will also tell you that I'm a woman who has a MBA on my wall, a piece of paper that says I have a master's in business administration. Fancy. And most of the things that I have done in my business, I know I didn't learn in MBA school. I've learned through lived experiences, through conversations, through folks and people that have come into my life and helped me with perspective and things along those lines. Okay, so I'll tell my story. It's a little vulnerable, and I'd say it's really old, and yet it's not in a way. I am somebody who came out at the age of 19 and came out as a gay woman. Okay, I have known who I've been for a very long time, and I live that life. I live that life where I got married. I built a family with 2 kiddos. I'll tell you about the bow tie here within the story, but, presenting with a bow tie to galas, events, and, celebrations and things like that. Like, I not hiding it in whatsoever, right? In any way, shape, or form, until entrepreneurship. That was probably my next stage. The insecurities that come up sometimes can be mind-boggling. I think if somebody would have said, by the way, you're going to start a business and all of a sudden you're going to want to go back in the closet, would have been like, what in the world are you talking about? Like, look at my life. It is very aligned to who I am. But essentially what ends up happening, and the story goes like this, very shortly after I left corporate America, and I knew that if I was going to start a business, I knew I needed to be visible. So I was networking, I was creating relationships, I was creating social media posts, all those things. But then there's that extra moment, that extra nudge from the universe that kind of asks you, like, do you really want this? And that little nudge for me came in the form of an event that I was invited to. The event I was invited to actually had a theme, and the theme was boots and bow ties. And again, I've already shared with you that I've worn them to other events, so I have a drawer full of them. But that night, as I was getting ready and about to put on that bow tie, that for me is that token of courage, like, I'm in this room, I'm claiming the space, I had a lot of insecurities bubble up. Not only am I a person of color, but the question that started to spiral in my mind was, can a woman who is gay be a successful entrepreneur? Now, here's what I know to be true. I'm not the first one, or will I ever be the only one who started a business. There's many, right? But in that moment, you kind of feel alone, and that do you really want to show up? What are you there to receive? What are people going to toss in your way? And so I was in my own way, naturally. And I ended up going downstairs to leave the house. And my wife says, "Hey, babe, where's your bow tie?" And I'm like, "Babe, I can't get myself to wear it. What if they find out I'm gay?" And my wife is a bit sarcastic. And she's like, "Babe, everybody knows." I'm like, but that didn't change anything. I didn't go back upstairs and put on the bow tie and leave the house that day. I actually, in some ways, continued to stay in the closet for the next year and a half. And where my story really starts to change, and yes, visibility is important and showing up in your business is important. And I'm going to say that some days it is freaking hard to do if you don't have a community of people who believe in you. So I happen to have a community like that. That's how you and I met, my friend, through something called Polka Dot Powerhouse. And I had to have the courage of taking the first step, which for me was, hey, I'm going to put down that token again, be visible, be authentically me, and let's see what happens. And what happened is nothing I could have predicted. I was not just accepted, I felt belonging. And while we don't usually wear bow ties, I think most of us, in some point of our journey, some aspect of who we are, probably need a little token, a little encouragement to be authentically 100% us. So that is my story. I happen to have a physical token. Now, I get to tell that story over and over again, but it's crazy the insecurities that come up when you start a business.
I can kind of relate to that when I was younger. And it's really funny today as we're recording this, I'm wearing red. I couldn't wear red because I felt like I was walking into a room saying, "Look at me." And I wasn't ready for anybody to look at me. So yeah, I think we all have those moments where we feel like we're not enough or we're too much or both at the same time.
100%. Yeah. So, and again, I think for me, as someone who didn't grow up with community and belonging, I needed that in order to give me the reassurance that I was going to be safe and that I was going to be seen as authentically me, which I give a lot of credit to regarding the growth that I've had in my business, because without that security, we easily start to hide. And it's really hard for our ideal clients to find us when we're invisible.
And I also liked what you say about community, because I think there's that whole myth about, the self-made success, like somebody pulls themselves up by their bootstraps and they did it all by themselves. And yet the truth is anybody who's successful has had a kick in the pants on whatever day you need those things. So when you work with entrepreneurs and you work with women entrepreneurs to help them with all these things, if somebody comes to you and they're feeling like they're not ready to be visible or they're having the doubts, what's one of the places you help people get started down this self-development journey of owning a business?
Right. And I love what you said earlier. And I say it often, and my last name's not B. If you want that to have a connect with me or something, I'll fill you in as to why that's a last name here. But I say whatever you choose to believe, that's a B pun, believe, you will become. And so our mindset and our purpose has a huge effect on whatever it is that we create. So the first thing I remind women entrepreneurs, and it's funny, I host workshops, and sometimes I'm like, "Hey," and they're like, "Hey, I've been following you for 2 years," and I'm like, "You have? Who are you? This is the first time I see you." And they're like, "Well, I'm a lurker." I'm like, the lurkers. Okay. So I love my lurkers, I gotta say, but it is hard to build a business as a lurker. It is hard to build a business when you're invisible and you're really just trying that somehow you're going to open up the doors to your business and people are going to walk on in. It does not usually work that way. So here's one tidbit that I want everybody to hear. Okay. I believe that everyone in this world has a gift, whether it is a gift that you're practicing in your business, or whether it's the gift that your friends call you at 2 a.m. or a friend has a lunch because they're like, "I need your help regarding this thing." We all have a gift. Okay. And what I feel is true is that there's someone in this world who will continue to go without the help they need until you, not somebody in your same industry, not somebody they find on Facebook or whatnot, but until you with your story shows up. So that's the first thing I share with my women entrepreneurs is that and the longer you hide, the more they go without. And because of the entrepreneurs that I work with, who are usually pretty purpose-driven and heart-centered, that hits hard, right? Then, of course, the other thing that I'm a big fan of, and unfortunately as humans, especially in a world of instant gratification, this is a hard concept to sometimes consistently practice. And it's the fact that many times we want things hard, like not hard, but we want things fast and now. Okay, that's great. And many times we write our goals and our commitments that way. I'm going to post on social media 7 times a week. I'm going to write 5 blogs a week. I'm going to show up in 30 networking meetings a month. And here's what we do. Sure, we might actually make that work for a week, 2 weeks, maybe 30 days. But eventually, because it's hard and possibly not aligned, we completely drop the ball. And I tell my clients that in those moments when you're dropping the ball, when somebody sees, pick it up on social media and then you drop the ball, they're also watching. Because as I started sharing about this, I shared with you, there's a bunch of lurkers. So what's the story we're telling them when we're inconsistent? Andrea, I'm also a coach who does not believe in one way of visibility. Like social media has worked well for me. Speaking has worked well, networking. But listen, if those things are not your jam, can we please stop doing things we don't enjoy? Just stop it. Just stop it and go find the things you do enjoy. Because I can tell you there's ideal clients will also find you that way instead of the inconsistency that many times happen when we are misaligned.
I love that because I totally agree. Because business, like you said, being in business is hard. And one of the great joys of being in business is you get to decide what you do. Yes. And if, I always say, if you would rather have a root canal than be on Facebook, then don't be on Facebook. It's not worth it to try to do something that it just feels awful.
Right. So
I also wanted to kind of go back a little bit to what you said about kind of the lurkers and people waiting to hear the right person. And I think that is such a powerful message because I think, and you can tell me if you agree, I think a lot of people, particularly like coaches and healers and stuff, there's so many people who do what I do. Why? Like, how am I different? How am I special? Yeah. And that's that they're waiting for you. What exactly is it that people are waiting for?
They're waiting for your story. Because here's what I know to be true about most of the entrepreneurs I work with, and probably most people who will listen to this. You probably created your business because you have a personal mission. And I created my business, especially business coaching, and the way I went into that is because in 2023, I had a mess. I had a business partnership. That business partnership went sideways. I had been a girl who had been, very highly steered towards corporate America because it was safe and because all these things. And so here I am in 2023 trying this thing that most people call crazy and unfortunately has a pretty high rate of failure. And I think it's because many people think that they can just do it on your own. So my friends, if you are listening to this, one thing I'm going to ask and nudge you to do is to find that one person who can support you through this journey, because it is they are probably going to hold the belief for you longer than sometimes you do on some days, because your days are going to be hard, right? And they can be hard. So what I share with my folks is, yes, most of us have a story of origin. Why did we create what we created? And we probably created it because at some point we had a pain point. At some point we had a frustration. At some point you were somewhere and you're like, you know what? I can do it better. And so we went about that way. I tell folks often your number one visual marketing piece is your face. It's called Facebook for a reason. It's not called put your written post up and call it a nice day. Okay. Number 2, your biggest content piece is your story. People remember story. I believe the number is like 2 times more likely to remember a story than a random fact. Share the story. Be vulnerable. You know my bow tie story. It probably has connected with a few of you. I know it has with a few of my clients. And that is what makes you different. Even if you have the same methodologies, even though you're in the same geography, even though you classify as the same thing as someone else, they are looking for you.
I agree. I think about just even looking at my own bookshelf and the number of books that I have on the exact same topic that I've read, and I've read all of them. And then suddenly there's one of them that says the exact same thing in the other books, but they said it in a way that suddenly grabbed me by the heart and went, this is what we mean. And so, yeah, I think that's part of it is just everybody needs to hear from the person that speaks their language, their experience.
I love that you equated it to books because, when you look at my bookshelf, there's a lot of similarities. Right. And when I go pick up a new book or download a new Audible, I'm not like, who am I kicking out? I'm like, great, I get another resource, right? Like, right? But so often in us as humans, we think, well, if they're already in that space and I can't go in it, right? They compare somebody across the street and they're like, well, they're better than I am anyway, so I'm not going to show up. Like, you are letting your clients down, your ideal clients down, when you don't show up and tell your story.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I do hear, and I've talked about this with other guests on this show, is sometimes people go, I don't really have a story. Like, I'm boring. I have nothing to say. How do you deal with, like, do you hear people say that? Like, I don't have any, I'm not
I do.
interested
And I
enough.
think when I hear people say that, a couple of things come up. Okay. Number one, a little bit of comparison, because they're like, for lack of a better word, my story is not as traumatic as their story. So hence I have no story to tell. My friends, if you have lived a day, you have a story to tell about something. Okay. Number two, I think it comes from a place of I'm unsure as to how to tell my story, which again, part of visibility, part of business is more than 80% of it is just showing up, just trying, just telling it one time randomly to a friend and see how it lands. But yes, I do hear that. And what I want to remind folks is that everybody has a story. It doesn't have to be a big, old, dramatic story with all the hardships in the world. One little thing I also like to do for my clients sometimes is to story tell through something. So, for example, I've got a phone. I'm going to guess that most of us have phones. Okay. I can tell you some stories about my phone. I can tell you stories about how my battery on my phone dies. I can tell you stories about how, I get notifications and connections on my phones. And sometimes I leverage this concept of an everyday story with an everyday item that I have a connection with. And I say, how does this even relate to your business? Right. So I connect with people on my phone. Connection is a big piece of what I do. Hence, I have a networking community. Right. So it's just linking things like that and realizing that there are stories in every probably single item that you have in your life.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a big baseball fan. And a few years ago, I did this whole series that I called Baseball as a Metaphor for Business. And I would tell a baseball story and then turn it into a business story. So, yeah, you could take any kind of random things in your life, something that you love. And one of the reasons I started talking about stories is another business friend of mine said, Andrea, whenever you talk about the Toronto Blue Jays, your face just lights up. Like, talk about it in your stories. And again, the example of having friends and business colleagues who understand what you're doing to give you that little nudge to try something.
Right. And our mind sometimes goes to, well, nobody really understands this or not enough people talk about it. My friends, do the things that light you up. And I got to tell you that there's enough clients for all of us. And there's enough clients who love baseball and also love what you do. There's enough clients that I'm a big Gator fan. I went to the University of Florida. And so college sports is a big one for me. And I can't tell you how many times I just drop some of these nuggets in my newsletters, even though I know that my ideal clients are typically not the biggest sports watchers in the world. But those stories, I get emails back that saying, oh, I'm a this fan and I'm a that fan. And I'm like, great. But this is why I don't have one story. I got multiple stories, and multiple stories will connect with multiple people, right? So yeah, do more of the things you love.
Yeah, I love that. Before we go, one of the things that I think holds people back, or that they say holds them back, is like, well, what if the story I tell pushes somebody away? Mm-hmm. And I hear that. That's a fear that people have. How do you respond to that?
What about if the story you tell attracts somebody to you? Right. And we will never, as humans, let's just even go beyond women entrepreneurs, be able to please everybody in our lives. At some point, somewhere, we won't be their best friend, or we won't be their cup of tea. We'll call it that for lack of a better word, based on something you may not even be in control of or aware of. So just show up as you, right? Tell the story. And the reality is that they're just not meant for you, or they're not meant for you today. I've continued to lean into more and more storytelling, but I kind of started off with, a little bit of a collection of them, and I refine them and I tell them differently. And there's different colors to them because I remember different details. And just know that storytelling takes some time, but it is built to connect people, right? And you don't need to be a powerful master storyteller who's told the same story for 20 years. Literally just talk to a friend, try it out.
Well, I mean, just think about it. If you're at a dinner party with a group of friends, you're going to tell stories. It's not because you're trying to sell them something or, grow your Instagram following. It's just, that's what we do as human beings is we connect and tell stories. So yeah, you can just take that skill that you probably already have
Mhm.
and add it to your business. So this has been so much fun, Jen. And I'm sure people listening are going, oh, Jen, this, I want to know more. How do people find you?
A couple different ways. The fastest way for me is a following on Facebook. So I am Coach Jen B on there. You can also find me under Jen B Blanco. Oh, I just leaked my last name. It is really Blanco. Jen B Blanco on LinkedIn. And then my website is Grow with Jen B. And if you Google me, my friends, you will find me. I try to be very visible and available for the right clients to come into my life, the right stories, the right friendships, the right connections. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share a little bit of my story with the world.
And I'll have all the links in the show notes. So, and do connect with Jen B, because I got to tell you, I've been following you on social media and I do love the stories that you tell. And I think if you've enjoyed this conversation, you will love the stories Jen tells too. So thank you for joining us today.
Have a good day. See you later, my friends.
Thanks for listening to Courage to be Visible. I hope today's conversation sparked ideas for your own visibility. If it helped, please share this episode with a friend. Follow the show and leave a quick rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps. For links, show notes, and free resources to grow your visibility, head over to the show notes or visit my website. See you next time.